Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing.
Magazine for this October 2nd, 2020. Your host, James J. Mayloff here. And joining us for the entire hour today is State Assembly District 72 Representative Scott Krug. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, James. How are you today?
Doing good. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's good to be here as always.
How are you and the family doing? How's everybody holding up?
Good. Yeah, we're hanging in there. You know, it's 1 month to election day, so things always get crazy every other fall in our house, but everybody's adjusted well, and kids are putting labels on postcards and sealing envelopes and putting signs together, and it's getting to be something that they love to do at some point.
I'm glad you bring that up, because one of the things that I know that you believe in as much as I do, finding silver linings during this pandemic and with everything going on. One of them is, you look great, man. You look like you've been getting out.
Dude, I have the October suntan now, I call it. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, every other year I get blessed to have a suntan in this time of year because you're out knocking on doors every day. And I've had a chance to see a lot of the great state of Wisconsin, helping a lot of my colleagues from Superior to Milwaukee to Wausau to Prairie du Chien, and of course, staying here in Wisconsin Rapids and Rome and Saratoga and just knocking and walking like crazy, man. I think I put 30 miles in last week, so I'm feeling pretty good.
I feel like that's one of those things that is great to bring up, too, because when we talk about the 72nd District, that stretches a little bit more than I think some people realize, distance-wise and everything. Yeah. So you're certainly, you're hitting our great friends in Rome and Wisconsin Rapids in that, but you're stretching out a little farther than that,
you beat the path all the way to Watoma. You get to know the corner of 21, 22, and 73 real well when you get to Watoma in that area. And, I always tell people I got the breadbasket of Wisconsin as my district. I've got the Watoma, Coloma, Plainfield, Hancock area. There's more peas, beans, corn, carrots, potatoes, cranberries, you name it. We grow it. We make it. I mean, that's what I love about this district is it is a huge ag district. It's a huge manufacturing district. All the big issues that touch Wisconsin touch my district, which is really nice. I mean, it really helps keep that perspective on the issues as you're working through them every 2 years.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and one of the things I love about talking with you is I can ask you questions both from, your own perspective, you as a citizen, but also just as a person in the game that's been doing this for a while and everything. When it comes to that, do you think the politicians have an advantage if they take it to be able to talk one-on-one with people when you're going door to door and that kind of thing?
Honestly, it depends on your message, and that's one of the big things I tell people all the time. You could be anybody, and I was in 2010. I was nobody. I had never had an elected office. I had never had any expectations of winning. Even the people in Madison who oversee the campaigns from time to time looked at me then and said, "Who's that guy running against a 40-year incumbent? No way this guy's going to win." This was in the last maps that were drawn where this district was, probably a 45% Republican district. I had really no business in winning it. When you knock on doors and you meet people and you have a good personality and a good message, anybody can win. And that's the benefit of going out and knocking on doors and talking to people, actually. Oops, sorry.
That's an important message, too, I think, to bring up, especially when you look at anything in this political landscape right now as we're getting closer to the November elections and everything. Right. I think that there's not just myself, but a lot of people that find politics. I almost find politics just as interesting in our state as in other states, and seeing the change of guards in different places or the continuing of a guard in other places. There's storylines there.
And
that's an interesting point.
And Wisconsin's really been the epicenter of, national politics for the last 10 years. I mean, anything that, is going on in the state or nation, and people look to us in Wisconsin. When you go to national legislator conferences, people look at us and say, "Oh, you're from Wisconsin. Tell me about this." Wisconsin's always been the laboratory of democracy.
I'm proud of it being a purple state.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of it, is being able to have those conversations with people, even when you're knocking on doors. If you see, I'll still knock on doors that have a Biden sign in the yard, even though I'm not supposed to. And we'll still go up and talk to those folks and just say, "Hey, I'm Scott Krug. I'm just here to see if there's anything I can talk to you about, or if you have any issues that you want to address." Just, and people do, and they'll sit there and talk. And nobody, this entire cycle, has slammed their door in my face. Well, I better knock on wood. I got to go out later today, but it just hasn't happened. So, I mean, that's the nice thing about being in this area.
I think it's important. One of the notes that I've heard from a number of, whether it is you or Mr. Teston, I've heard this from Kind, I've heard it from a number of people, is this idea that in this state, at least, I haven't heard it from national politics as much, but around here, that I've heard people say that it is important that after whatever happens here, if I'm in office, I'm going to be reaching across the aisle. That bipartisanism, that term has been used more than I've heard it used ever in my life in politics.
Right.
And that's so key these years. So I think it's awesome that you mentioned that. And a door that has a Biden sign in it or something, still going up and talking to them, is that you're going to be representing them just as much as representing somebody that had a Krug sign in their yard.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even in my business, I mean, those lines are blurred a lot. Yeah. When I'm doing real estate, I don't just sell Republican houses. I don't just, I don't have to have Republican buyers.
Yeah. That'd be tough.
One of the listings I have now, the bluest of blue people in the world. We sat down and talked to them, met with them, and they're like, "Oh, I know you." I'm like, "Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's get the elephant on, let's just take a bite out of this thing." And sit down and talk to people one-on-one. They're like 10 minutes later, like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we're good."
Yeah.
Hey, people are people, right?
Yes.
And if you can relate to them on any level, they're going to be just fine. It's when you get into crowds or when people get behind keyboards, like we talk about all the time.
Yes.
That's when people turn into different things.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference there when you talk even when you talk in front of a crowd of 25 or 30 people. Groupthink takes over. So it's a challenge.
It is, and I'm glad you bring this up too, because that gives me a segue into one of the questions I wanted to ask. One of the I don't think there's really tough questions with you, because you're just going to give it your honest answer. So
I don't have anything written down.
Right on. Yeah,
I was hoping community media was here, like they thought, so I could show them. I got a blank piece of paper here, just waiting. So.
Scott does not use cue cards. Neither do I, but you already knew I don't. You can tell by the way I talk. I think that it's something that's come up, and I want to ask every representative I get a chance to talk to, anybody in politics I get a chance to talk to, because I think this is important. This isn't a Democrat or Republican thing. Yeah. I think that it is interesting, and it has to be. Is it challenging for you when you have one side of things saying that, well, these are the facts, this is what I have to say, and then they come back with, no, that's not true. But nothing else, just know that's not true, and battling against that. Now, certainly we hear that a lot from the Republican side, but that happens on the Democratic side as well.
Sure.
I've seen it happen. Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with something like that, whether it is a constituent or another, politician or something, when they're not listening to actual facts, when they're not listening to... How do you handle something like that where basically you're kind of left with,
Yeah, back when I first started, I used to try to take on every single fight I possibly could and just try to bang my head against the wall enough so somebody listened and I finally busted my head through it. But I realized really soon after a few years of doing this, that you're not going to convince everybody to like you. You're not going to convince everybody that you're right and that your opinion is the one that counts and that you're the smartest person in the room. It doesn't happen. So sometimes it's okay to say, hey, man, it's all right, and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't. Arguing for argument's sake is just way too cliche nowadays. And you saw the debate.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. A couple of children in the sandbox.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
I heard somebody afterwards saying, wouldn't it be easier to just, play the Hunger Games to narrow it down to from 340 million people to 2?
Telling you. We need Samuel L. Jackson to do the next debate. Nobody's going to talk like that around Samuel L. Jackson.
Can you imagine that, right?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
I'm playing it out in my head. We got to get back on track. But that's the point. It really is the point, is you can be argumentative for argumentative's sake, but you can try to get something done another way.
Well, and how great, I appreciate you giving us that, not only from the body of work that you have. You've been doing this a long time, and you among more than a lot of us that are listening right now have been in those situations where it is you're just trying to get your point across or something, and you're getting battled back with nothing but childish bickering or something like that. Mm-hmm. The understanding that, hey, it's okay to walk away sometimes. You don't have to battle back in immaturity with immaturity.
Right.
You can just be the adult in this situation.
And the word that I use in that situation is leadership.
Yep.
Leadership isn't convincing everybody you're right. Leadership is guiding people towards the right answer. Mm-hmm. And if some of those people don't get on the boat, that's okay. I mean, it just isn't going to happen. I mean, And Tommy Thompson was the one that taught me this when I first started. I mean, I'm still awestruck at Tommy, and I'm glad that he's a UW president now because being on the colleges and universities committee for the last 10 years, I get to work with him on a regular basis now, and it's an awesome situation. But he told me when he first sat down with me in 2011 was the first time I sat down with him, right around the Act 10 stuff was all crazy, and he just wanted to have coffee with me across from the Capitol. I'm like, oh, cool. So first thing he told me, he goes, you're probably not going to get reelected. You might want to get another job. Okay, thanks, Gov. I appreciate it. But second, he said, you don't have to please everybody all the time. If you've got a message, don't be afraid, on the other hand, though, to go into the lion's den and talk about it. I mean, it doesn't hurt you to go into a place where people don't like you and at least tell them what you think and what you feel and what your opinion is, and let them respect you for being strong enough and brave enough to come face what you might think is a tough situation. And that's how Tommy got reelected to be governor 4 times in the state of Wisconsin, with 65 to 70% support sometimes. Don't be afraid to go into the lion's den. Don't be afraid to be bold. Don't be afraid to take on issues. Don't be afraid to put your name and face and recognition and your whole reputation on the line to get something done that you believe in. I mean, that's the whole point of this job.
And I think it takes more fortitude. It takes a braver person to be able to sometimes walk out of a conversation than to just continue it with bickering, to continue insult to insult and match insults and that kind of thing. Yeah. Sometimes like you said, you have to be the bigger person or just be an adult, not even the bigger person or anything like that, and just be like, all right, we had our conversation. Thank you for your time. Moving on.
And it's a great training ground to go into politics if you got 6 kids at home.
Yeah, I bet.
You learn that skill really easy. Like, okay, you guys figure it out. I got to go.
I know you're running a little late today and everything, and I appreciate you being able to get in. That's okay. No, that's completely understandable, especially the reasons why you were. You were at the task force, I believe.
Well, no, I didn't have task force.
The task force. I'm sorry.
No, I heard about the change in leadership at Verso yesterday, so we reached out, and I got a chance this morning, right before I got on the air, to talk to the new CEO, Randy Nebel, and kind of figure out where things are with Verso and what's going on. So I wanted to reach out to him and congratulate him, open the lines of communication, just say, that Adam and I had a good conversation every couple of weeks. I'd love to continue that. Randy's more than open to that. He's a little deer in the headlights a little bit. He said he walked into work yesterday at 7:30 and found out that he had a new office, and he'd never been in that room before. So he's new at it. So he's been in the business quite a while, though, and he's got some good confidence that things are happening here. We've heard a lot of rumors in the last few weeks about potential announcements and things like that. I know there's every time a rumor hits up in Wisconsin Rapids, I get Facebook blows up and Messenger hits 100 times a day. So every time that happens, I call over to corporate and just try to vet it out a little bit and say, hey, what's going on? This is what we're hearing. Can you tell me what's going on? So we've, and the task force is continuing. I mean, there's a lot of side work in between and around it, and trying to find a new buyer and trying to make sure we've got community supports for people who need them. And we've got a few groups who have gotten to the non-disclosure stage, and that makes the task force a little tougher. Because at that point, they can't really discuss what's going on anymore because they've got a non-disclosure agreement. So we're at that point with the Trucker and Loggers Co-op. We're at that point with a couple other companies that I can't name. And that's part of the NDA problem, too, is I can't even tell people who they are or what's going on. But it's fair to say, and with David Sams coming back to be the local manager now again, back from corporate, who has had a lot of experience here, we kind of call David the closer. He's kind of the guy who's gotten things done, so we're pretty confident we're moving on the right path here. So, that was today's conversation, was to welcome Randy to the fray and make sure that he knows what our expectations are. And Senator Test and I have laid those out pretty well since the start of the task force, that it's time to find a buyer, it's time to get this thing moving, and I think Verso's on the track to getting that done.
And as far as because you're in town just like the rest of us, and you hear a lot of these rumors and different things that get speculated about and everything, is there any details you can give about any of that kind of thing, any of the kind of things that you've heard? Yeah,
I think a lot of people have heard that, the company that we've been trying to get into this mill, Phoenix Papers, people had been hearing that Phoenix had toured and we're close to making an announcement. People had also heard that Pixel, the company that owns the facility in Stevens Point, had been in to tour and to have some interest in it. So, I can confirm that both of those companies have been here to look. can also confirm that I can't say any more about how far they've gone beyond looking. So that's the struggle. I mean, but yeah, we want to make sure people know that there is no announcement imminent today, but there is a lot of activity on a new buyer. And whether it's a non-compete or a compete clause within that structure, as we heard from Senator Baldwin this week, I'm not really so much concerned about that. I want somebody to be able to come in here, operate this place, employ a lot of people. It doesn't matter to me what that product's going to be at the end, as long as it's something that people can be in Wisconsin Rapids working to create. Honestly, if there is a non-compete, I don't know if that matters, because there really isn't a market for printing and writing paper right now.
Yeah.
So I don't see anybody in that market even trying to come and buy this mill. There's got to be a new product. There's going to have to be a new customer line. There's going to have to be a lot of conversion. But a lot of the rumor revolves around the fact right now that there's probably going to end up being a big pulping operation, maybe using number 16 as a pulp drying machine, as pulp is in short supply in the paper industry across North America, and we've got one of the best pulping operations here, period. So those are some of the things that are floating around. So we take all that information in, we try to vet it as much as we can, and we let people know what we know, when we know it. So that's kind of the bulk of the conversation daily on Messenger, and talking to people and saying, hey, this is what I know. Tell me what you've heard. I'll tell you what I can figure out, and taking those back to corporate and making sure those lines of communication are open.
I think it's so important for us to be able, especially in this day and age, to be able to just, even if it's not detailed facts, get some detail, some fact to what the conversation is going on. It's a little funny to me when I first moved to this area. One of the things that I found that I had in common with the south side of Chicago is the grapevine.
You don't miss it. Yeah, that's right.
It's one of those things that people know about things before they even happen to you. Word spreads quick. Right. And it's no different here in Wood County, where word spreads quick. And oftentimes that word, a little like a game of telephone, it can get a little bit diluted and changed up and everything.
Sure, yeah. By the time that I heard that there was some sort of an announcement happening this week, before we had heard that it was a CEO change, I mean, people throughout the grapevine had already known that there was something going on, because the union stewards have been pulled in by the company to discuss it. And as soon as somebody heard that the union stewards were discussing something with Verso, all of a sudden their minds go to, oh, we've got a sale, and as soon as somebody said, oh, there's a sale, oh, we're all going, so it blew up super quick. So we don't try to tamp it down, but we sure do try to confirm it. So, I mean, whatever happened with Adam and his situation with Verso as the CEO, we don't know. We may never know what happened, but there are rumors to what happened there too, and I'm not going to speculate on those. It was time for a change. Things weren't working out. Randy's a decent guy from our first conversation. I think we really hit it off well yesterday, to the point where he said, as soon as they know something, Senator Test and I are going to know it right away too. So that's all I could expect from somebody new.
I appreciate that, the behind the curtain look, the transparency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that one of the biggest things to take from all of this is that there are wheels in motion. Things are not. There's still some life there. There's some energy there as far as trying to make things work. Is the task force getting together again anytime soon?
Yeah, I think our next meeting is next week, Wednesday. We had been meeting in person and virtual, but I think we're moving to a more of a all virtual mode at this point, with the non-disclosures that are out there, and obviously with the COVID situation that's happening. So we keep those on Zoom. Everything that we do on the task force, from every meeting we've ever had, every document we've ever received, is on our website, rapidstogether.com. That's also where people can go for community resources if they need something, if they're impacted by the loss of this. All of our community partners, from United Way to the schools to everybody, has bought into the concept that this Rapids Together is a great idea. So we're trying to make sure everybody knows that website exists and that you can access resources there.
Appreciate that, Scott. And I also appreciate you guys letting us know all these details about the task force, even when you're not here, the newsletters you send out, just the different things that you're posting on social media. All of that is all very helpful. And the more real, information we get from actual sources, the better we have, what we have to go on.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we did the Teams, Microsoft Teams approach for all of our meetings, so they could all be recorded through Midstate and put on the website. So if somebody wanted to sit down on a Friday night and you just had some concerns, you can watch every single meeting we've had since June through this task force, see and follow the conversations as they've gone through, to see how bipartisan and open the discussion has been for all of the local representatives from state and federal all the way through. So like I said before, this is the one thing in politics that I've ever done that has been completely nonpartisan. I mean, it's been beautiful so far. I mean, everybody's come to say, okay, it's time to figure out what we can do to get something done.
It feels like since the beginning of this, it's been one of those things where everybody takes the R and the D off of their name before they go into the meetings, and they're just, let's just talk, let's get this done, Let's do what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of collaboration across the aisle to make sure that we're on the right path. And if we had not done this, we wouldn't be on that right path. We wouldn't have been able to guide Verso into finding some of these people who have an interest. We wouldn't probably heard a lot of conversation between Phoenix Papers and Verso. We probably wouldn't have seen a lot of conversation between WDC and Pixel, and just making these connections for everybody has been huge in this process.
As long as we're on the COVID path and we're talking about it and everything, we got some emails from some listeners over the week, getting ready for both to talk to you and Christy, and some similar talking points, some similar crossover with the questions that they had. So I'm just going to kind of ask those as brought together a little bit and do my best to kind of morph them together. Wisconsin is now a national leader in COVID cases. What is the Wisconsin legislature doing to lead us through this pandemic? And essentially one of the other questions that came up from people is, what is the Republicans' plan for dealing with the virus? I feel like these are almost the same kind of question. But I want to give credit to everybody that sent in questions and everything. So kind of taking it from there, if you will.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, our COVID response started early on, where we passed our COVID relief bill. It was a huge bipartisan vote in the legislature. The governor signed it almost immediately, where we were able to draw down $2 billion from the federal government for COVID impacts. And that money is still sitting with the state of Wisconsin from the federal government to be used in the response. So we've only spent, I think we heard from the Joint Finance Committee that $76 million out of that $2 billion has been allocated right now through the governor's office. So every federal dollar that comes into the state of Wisconsin is controlled by the governor and the Department of Administration. So this $2 billion has been earmarked for things like child care assistance, additional food share, to make sure that farmers have aid, to make sure that businesses have assistance, to make sure that hospitals have PPE and all the equipment that they need. So we've done everything we can possibly do to draw down every single red cent from the federal government to make sure that everybody in every avenue of impact, even in the arts, there's even money allocated for the arts during COVID right now. So all of that money is in the state capitol waiting to be sent out and waiting for the governor to say, okay, this is how much we're going to put and where. The Main Street program for small businesses is a huge impact. Making sure that, we're trying to beef up the unemployment assistance program to make sure that people can actually get through when they call. 1% of the calls that people have made since April have actually been received by DWD. So a lot of those federal dollars that we've passed into that bill we're asking the governor to use for unemployment assistance as well. So I think we've done as a robust job as we possibly can to bring down as much money as humanly possible to address anything that is a COVID impact, not only in this region, but in the state of Wisconsin as a whole. So if there's a bigger impact for PPEs in Milwaukee, that's where we need to send that money. If there's a bigger need for farmer assistance here in my district, that's where that money's going to come from. So I think everything's there. It's just a matter of pulling the right levers now.
I want to kind of go to the constituents for a second there, because especially like we talked about early on, you've been door to door more than most lately, and been able to actually get one-on-one time with people and talk to people and kind of get their feedback about the situation and what's going on. The news broke last night that the president and first lady and I don't want to get into whether it's true or not or all that kind of thing. What is so frustrating to me and is so example of this time that we're living in is the fact that that's even a question.
Yes.
And that we're even in that position that we're in. And everybody has to take responsibility for that.
It's the mantra that I used at the end of our July or August show. I said, COVID is real. We're going to find a buyer for the mill, and the CAFO is dead. I mean, these three things are things that people talk about at the door is, okay, what's going on with this? What's happening with that? So when, it's a weird dance that we do when we go to knock on doors during COVID, right? I mean, I got the neck gaiter. So as you approach a door, usually I'd go knock on the door. I'd stand on the stoop. I'd wait for someone to answer. I'd give them the paper. I'd talk to them for a few minutes. Now I walk up to the door. I ring it, and I step back 6 feet away from the answer, kind of judge where they're at with the situation. If they're going to open the door and talk, or they're wearing a mask, do I pull up my gaiter? Do I keep social distancing? So it adds this whole different dynamic even into that conversation, that once you get past that, then you're finally at the stage where you can have a conversation. And then people start asking questions. And obviously, you know, when I see them not open the door, or if they have their mask on when they're opening the door, you know the conversation is going to go to, I don't know if I feel safe. And that's perfectly fine. So then we have a discussion about COVID and how we're trying to be socially distant and those things. So it's a different dynamic, but the conversations are still the same.
It's seeming to, not just nationally, but even locally, evolve from, is this even a pandemic? You know, the people that question it, right, to now people believing that it is really going on, but is it a serious one? Or are we taking it too serious? Are we taking it not serious enough? Again, you've had boots on the ground. You've been actually going to doors, right, and not asking what everybody thinks clearly, but, you know, the consensus of your constituents. Why do you feel like that this is such a lightning rod, such a difficult thing for people, like a consensuous issue, right, and I'm saying this from both sides, whether people that want to wear masks or don't, people that believe it's a sacrifice that they need to make and one that they don't need to make. Yeah. Why do you feel like there is such it's such a heated thing? Yeah,
I mean, there's two different reasons it is. I mean, people in Wisconsin, people in America have a inane sense of freedom, right? Yeah. And for government to throw down their fist and say you are to do this, you are not to do that, challenges people's inner feelings and beliefs as who they are as Americans. Yeah. That's the core belief that a lot of people have. That's one of the big problems with trying to convince people of one certain thing. The second thing that made it so polarized is they're in the worst election season that we've ever come across, and the same time that we're having one of the biggest pandemics that's ever happened. Yeah. You put those two things together and people are confused. They're scared. They're worried. They don't want to admit what they think because their friends may not feel the same thing. And they don't want to feel any more ostracized than they already are from a society by losing friends over issues like the mask. So they really don't want to tell you what they really think, right? And I don't push people on it, and I don't bug people about it because I don't want to put them in that situation. I know that people can take care of themselves. I know that people can make the right decisions for their health care. And I know that people are smart enough to know that they're not supposed to be going somewhere if they're sick, or trying to make sure that they're staying away from situations they're not supposed to be a part of. I used to take time out of my day 3-4 days a week to call my mom and dad and say, hey, make sure you don't do this. Make sure you don't do that. You know, you're kind of at that age where you probably shouldn't go here. You probably shouldn't go there. I learned real quick during COVID, people don't like that. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, and if they can't find that in themselves, who am I to tell them, hey, you know what, you better knock it off. So those are the things that make this COVID conversation really difficult with people, is they're scared and frightened and concerned, and they're lonely. Yeah. People want to be with each other. It's really hard to jive all those things into making this thing work for everybody.
Very well said, and appreciate not only that answer, the honesty of that answer, but coming from you again, somebody who is in a position like you are, where you're not only going door to door and talking to people and everything, but you're talking to not just one party, you're talking to both sides. So I feel like getting your perspective on this is important for us. Yeah. And I appreciate that I felt like when you answered that, you didn't answer it like I was asking somebody who's running for office. Yeah. I feel like I was just talking to another citizen. I appreciate that when you do that, and that you are able to do that.
Man, I tell you, when I knock on doors and people come to answer it, the first part of that conversation, and you really in this job and any other job, I should say, is being able to read people and look at them. And every time I go somewhere, every time I see somebody, you see that different tinge in their eye, like, God, what do I do? Every conversation, every situation, people have that look like, oh God, what do I do? Even walking in here today. You know, I'm running a little behind, having the gaiter in my hand. I'm like, what do you do? So, you see that in people, and you have to have empathy in this job, and you have to know what people are feeling.
And it should feel like, I feel like that's something, instead of separating us, should bring us together, because we're all in the same boat. It doesn't matter who you're voting for or anything like that, or where your beliefs are in any category. You're confused. You don't have all the answers. Whether you are at the top of the scientific, community, or if you're me and, just a average fan of science and things like that, you don't know. And we're all on the same page on this one. Yeah. So if anything, it should bring us closer together than it's separating us, and understanding that, well, whatever my beliefs are and whatever I think works, maybe my neighbor doesn't believe the same thing, and that's okay. That's America.
And that's the problem with fear. Right?
Yeah.
And when we buy into fear, people don't want to conform. When you buy into fear, people have a hard time agreeing. When you buy into fear, people feel caged in. People feel cornered, and they don't want to necessarily huddle together. It's our basic instincts that are taking over right now. And I know that things are changing, and I know that people are getting more comfortable with the thought of, okay, we've got to do all the same things all at the same time together for a while. And you see that in silos, like I talked about with the task force and other things. There are pockets of that happen. It's just when you get around this, these next 30 days are going to be absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to change their minds about anything. It just is what it is.
Halloween isn't the only thing scary this time of year, now, this year in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more with Representative Scott Krug on the Morning Magazine, AM 1320, WFHR.
The bakers of Country Hearth and Village Hearth breads are proud to support local education with Loaves for Learning, the program that makes it easy to earn money for your school. Enjoy Country Hearth and Village Hearth all-natural breads, buns, bagels, and more. Then save the UPC from the package for your school to collect and redeem. Each is worth 5 cents and can be used for books, computers, sports, music, whatever your school needs. Up to $10,000 a year. Learn more at loavesforlearning.com. Country Hearth and Village Hearth breads, baking our best for you.
Ladies, gentlemen, kids, even pets, we're back on your radio every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday with The Morning Hour. From 9 to 10, we will bring you up-to-date news, sports, weather, along with interviewing some of our best and celebrating your birthdays and anniversaries with Misty's Menu. It's serious comedy to start your day off right. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 to 10, leading into Morning Magazine from 10 to 11, and Over the Back Fence, 11 to noon, on your station, AM 1320, WFHR, and streaming live 24/7.
The Big and Bill Michaels here, and I'm with you weekdays 1 to 5 on Central Wisconsin's very own AM 1320 WFHR.
Here's your forecast from the Weather Eye Weather Center.
For today, we'll have partly to mostly cloudy conditions, with high temperatures only reaching into the upper 40s. Then for tonight, again widespread frost with lows approaching 30. On your Saturday, cloudy with a chance for showers developing. We'll reach a high of 48 degrees. And Saturday night, rain could even mix with some snowflakes before ending. Low temperatures into the lower part of the 30s. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro.
Looking at the temperatures in your neighborhood, it is 40 in Stevens Point, 43 in Marshfield, 39 in Wausau, 44 in Wisconsin Rapids. How do those feel?
40s.
I know. It just hits you every time. You tried delivering it twice an hour. It made every time. You
try
feel
walking it every day. Never mind. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
yes,
that's
exactly. Speaking of your walking path, and kind of touching on what we were earlier speaking about the 72nd district and everything. We, of course, have been, gerrymandering has been in the news.
Yes.
I know that you mentioned before we went on air in our pregame that you wanted to talk about it too. And I certainly want to mention the Fair Maps Pledge and what's going on with that. Before we get into that, for those that may not understand, or, even people, longtime residents that know the Wood County area and what they think they may know what the 72nd district is, can we kind of give people just a ballpark real quick of what that is?
Yeah,
what the 72nd
absolutely.
district
I love
is?
describing the 72nd because Wisconsin Rapids is actually the northern edge of my district, right? We are almost at the edge of it, actually, right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Wisconsin Rapids, Saratoga, Buren, Port Edwards, Grand Rapids, and Wood County. Then you stretch down through Adams County, down that Highway 13 corridor till right before you hit Friendship and that park right there by the dam. Not my district. Right before that, that's my district. So if you go swimming at the lake there, that's part of the district. Then you jut over through Waushara County on 21, all the way through Watoma, right up to the borders of Red Granite. That's way out there. People don't really realize how far past Watoma it actually goes. It goes right up to Red Granite, and then circle back up around through Almond and Bancroft onto the interstate, and touch back up around Buren. So you got southern Wood County, northern Adams, western Waushara, and a very small sliver of southern Portage County, actually.
Appreciate you breaking it down, especially for those that may not understand a lot of the details there and stuff. And I know that we have out-of-state listeners and things like that find these things interesting. So when it comes to breaking that down, then on the inside of that, where it comes to voting and where the term gender, why this is such a bit of a topic that has been around a lot in the last two election cycles, really, going back to the past elections to the ones coming up in November. This term has been brought up a lot. And then one of the things that we were touching on Wednesday and have talked about other times too is the Fair Maps Pledge.
Sure.
So where are you coming from when it comes to this topic, when it comes to gerrymandering in general?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that the state constitution is very plain. It says the legislature shall have this responsibility, and if we do decide to write a bill to change the Constitution, it's got to go through 2 consecutive sessions of the legislature. Then it comes to the people for referendum. If that happens, great, I'm all for it. But to sit here today and tell you that there is a nonpartisan commission in Madison, of all places, that is going to draw a map fairly is poppycock, or whatever word you can use on radio to describe the thing that comes out of the back of a cow. Nobody in Madison is nonpartisan. Nobody in Madison is nonpartial. Nobody in Madison has a bone in their body that doesn't have a preference towards one thing or another. So if you are going to go off the premise that everybody has a partiality, I would rather those people who are elected have that partiality than non-elected bureaucrats who are not responsible to anybody. If people don't like our maps, they can absolutely decide to vote us out. My district in particular is drawn to be 50.1% Republican. 57,000 people exactly in every of our 99 districts. When I first won, I ran in a district that was drawn by the courts in 2010. That was a 47% victory I had. My new map took me to a 50.2. After that, I had 54, 56, 58, shooting for 60 this time. And it's not because the people have changed in those 10 years. It's because I've done work those 10 years to earn those votes, to knock on people's doors every 2 years and ask for that opportunity to win. You cannot look at the results of my district and tell me that gerrymandering has an impact, because I've won every single municipality within this district across the board the last 2 elections. It's not as though Watoma is adding to my totals innately that just totally wipe out Wisconsin Rapids, which is typically seen as the Democrat part of my district. I win Wisconsin Rapids 53 or 54% each time. If there was something on that map that showed me that I got 90% in Watoma and Hancock and Coloma and Plainfield and everywhere else, and I only got 35% in Wisconsin Rapids, that'd be a pretty darn gerrymandered map.
As a citizen, you can understand the concern, and I say this as somebody who my whole life I've been very lucky. I grew up in a purple house, and I grew up in a purple family and everything. So I've always seen things from both sides. And for me, the easy answer is, well, what do the people want? What's best for the people? It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. So when it comes to that, and I look at a topic like gerrymandering, I don't care where you live. It should scare you. It should make you concerned, and you should want to look into it and want to understand, well, why is this being brought up in my area? Because nobody's vote deserves to be discounted. And you guys are in this position because this is what the people want. And if the people aren't being heard, that should make all of us in a democracy look and pay attention. So you are a citizen. You're a people just like this. And I'm sure that you coming into this with the perspective of, you also, you're not going to spend your whole life in politics. One day you'll be out of the game, and you want your voice to be heard when that day comes and everything. So this is just as important a topic to you as anybody else. When it comes to that concern and everything, what kind of feedback, what are you hearing from constituents about that? Are you hearing a lot of talk of gerrymandering? Are you hearing this come up?
I don't. At the doors, it has never come up.
And this is, like you mentioned earlier with the Biden houses you go to, and that's not even coming up there.
Not one time that I've ever knocked on a door has somebody said, why does this map include this area? Or why do we do this way? Or, so I mean, there's conversations that we have with our counties and our local municipalities on how things affect them with the maps that are drawn. But a constituent has never answered their door and said, why is your map line go over here? And like I said, if I was getting 35% in one part of the district and 90% in another part of the district, that'd be a different story. When we talk about these lines and the traditions and what is called a gerrymandering process, when you look at old congressional districts in Chicago, tell me that those lines look the same as our Wisconsin state maps.
Right.
Not even close. And those even passed constitutional muster.
Which is shocking.
With the United States
in many
Supreme
ways.
Court. So when you look at some of the things that happen in what is a real gerrymandered district, there are lines that go up, around, carve out this, go way back around here, go way over there, and then come back over here. That's gerrymandering. Dude, I got a square right in the center of Wisconsin that fits 57,000 people in it. And it's gone through every court challenge it can the last 10 years, the United States Supreme Court, the local court, state courts and everything else. And we had to change one line in a Milwaukee district that actually created a minority-majority district. That's what the court said. You change this line from a horizontal to a vertical so we can make sure that we have a minority-majority in this district. And then the rest is fine. And to give you some history on how the maps in Wisconsin work, before 1970, we used to have representatives appointed by their county. Say Wood County would have 2, one for the northern part, one for the southern part. Milwaukee would have 7 or 8, but you're all within your county line. You represented your county. The reapportionment law came in 1970 with new maps that were drawn in 70, 80, 90, 2000, and 2010. The only time that it was drawn by the legislature entirely on its own was in 2010, where the maps we're under right now. Every other time there's been split control of the legislature or split control of the executive branch of the legislature, where the courts have come in and said, okay, we're going to draw this map. So it's happened once in the history of drawing maps that the legislature and the governor were of the same party, that the maps had changed. That's why elections do have consequences. That's an important part for people to understand, is that, if it's in the Constitution, the legislature draws it and the governor signs it, we're not going to have that same conversation in 2021 when we draw the maps again. We have a split between the legislature and the governor. Maps are probably going to get drawn by the courts, which, I don't know how people can say that the courts are any less partial than a commission.
Yeah.
Right?
You hit it on the head earlier, that there's not a human being alive that doesn't have, personally, whatever job they do or anything like that, they have some feelings. They have some ties, even if they're not a political person or even pay attention to politics. They've got cares. They've got concerns.
Right. Even somebody that would program a computer to draw a map.
Yeah.
Even the programmer is going to have some tints to them to say, okay, let's do this, let's do that. So, if there was a way that we had a completely impartial person, process, somebody, I haven't seen it. So that's what it is. And that's why it's so controversial, because to say it and to rip the Band-Aid off and tell people what the reality of it is isn't comfortable.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's never been, and it's never modeled itself as a perfect system, our political system, our democracy. It's never said that that's what it is, and it's never tried to be that, or it's tried to be that. It just is doing the best it can with the system, but I do feel that, to piggyback off of the topic of gerrymandering, it stems from basically an area not being represented by the people, and it being represented by a different side in that. And that should be concerning to everybody, I think. Anytime that people are not being heard. I bring this up when it comes to, and we don't have time for this one, but the electoral votes and that kind of thing.
Sure.
That's an important topic I feel like that we all need to have as a country, and re-looking at that and re-examining that, making sure that, again, the people are being represented in the Oval Office as much as in local offices and that. That also brings up the idea to me about votes not being taken seriously, not being counted in that. And this big conversation that's going on right now with mail-in voting and all this.
That's a great topic. I would love to do a 101 on what the difference is between what some states call mail-in voting and what Wisconsin has as early absentee voting. Here in Wisconsin, any ballot that gets sent to you through the mail, you have to present a photo ID to the Elections Commission before you get that ballot. There are some states, and that's why there's concern with mail-in balloting, that everybody just automatically gets a ballot, whether you're shown a photo ID or not. People should be safe and secure in the thought that Wisconsin allowing absentee voting up to 6 weeks before the election with a photo ID is safe. Whether you agree or not that the post service is what do you want to send it back in? That's your choice. Here in Wisconsin Rapids, they have drop boxes. You can go to City Hall today and you can go vote in person, absentee, early, and turn it into the city clerk. So whether you vote by mail, technically, it's absentee voting. It's not vote by mail in Wisconsin. We don't have that process. So that conversation here should be moot. It should be over. Mm-hmm. The only question is that some people still have, because of the conversations that went on with the post office, is whether you think the post office should deliver it or if you can deliver it yourself. Mm-hmm. 6 weeks before the election, when everybody knows that the election's happening, you should be able to get a ballot. You should be able to fill it out. You should be able to return it at some point, maybe on one of your trips to Walmart or wherever else you're going. Drop it off at the city clerk's office if you're not comfortable with the mail. Or put it in your mailbox, raise the flag, send it in, and check on the Election Commission website about a week later to know that your ballot has been received. And at the end of Election Day, you can check on that website again at myvotewisconsin.gov to make sure your ballot's been counted. Our process here, we've worked really hard the last 8 years to make sure it's safe, secure, and ready for everybody to vote. Go vote today and get it done. And then help people go vote on Election Day by driving them around if they need to go to the polls. I mean,
volunteering, boxes.
There are so many options for voting in Wisconsin.
And really, there is some personal accountability that has to take place here, too, exactly. As far as, we need to make it safe. We need to make it, as flexible for people as we can. I believe that has been done in many areas, and I can't speak for the rest of the country. I'm just talking about our neck of the woods here. In getting out there and doing it, getting out there and vote. It's not about, I don't care who you're voting for. I just want you to get out there and vote. Make sure that you're registered.
Same here. And if I didn't do my job, vote. And if I didn't talk to you, or if I didn't do something right, don't vote for me. That's fine. I mean, I want everybody to vote today, tomorrow, all week, up until Election Day. Go get it done. The one thing I don't agree with is saying that if we can vote up to 6 weeks before the election, I don't like this extra week after the election to continue counting ballots. I think the legislature should go into session before Election Day and say, let's start counting absentees as soon as they arrive, instead of trying to count them all on Election Day and up to a week after, when people are going to start questioning the legitimacy of the vote. A week after Election Day to have to wait for results is kind of a ridiculous notion when we can vote 6 weeks early in Wisconsin and have them all into the clerks on Election Day. If everything is there on Election Day, by 8 o'clock that night, where they should all be locked up and tabulated, they can count them through the day. There should be no reason we have an extra week to count.
I agree with you. I also feel that we also need to make sure that not only our post office, but our volunteers and our people collecting these ballots and all that have all the resources they can get, and as many volunteers and as many people as we can to help them make that process happen as fast as possible. Yeah. We need all hands on deck here. We need a lot of help with that and making sure that not only the post office is taken care of, but these other things are too. And that's another topic that we could easily get into for another half an hour and everything. We do have to take a quick break.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do that. We'll come back and we'll wrap things up with Representative Scott Krug here on Morning Magazine, AM 1320 WFHR.
Home Furniture and Design celebrating their 50th anniversary, and you could win a room makeover. Listen to 1320 WFHR each week to clues given about our programs on WFHR. Every Tuesday, we'll ask a question, and the first caller with the correct answer wins a prize and will qualify for the grand prize, a room makeover, featuring Ashley living room furniture, including a sofa, love seat, cocktail table, 2 end tables, 2 lamps, an 8x10 area rug, and accessories from Home Furniture and Design, and Valspar paint from Pittsville Farm and Home Center. A total room makeover value of $5,000. You can also qualify by registering at Home Furniture and Design, West Grand Avenue, Wisconsin Rapids, and Home Furniture, 1541 Post Road, Plover. For more information, go to homefurniturewi.com or the WFHR Facebook page to view the grand prize. And good luck from AM 1320 WFHR.
Here's your forecast from the Weather Eye Weather Center.
For today, we'll have partly to mostly cloudy conditions with high temperatures only reaching into the upper 40s. Then for tonight, again widespread frost with lows approaching 30. On your Saturday, cloudy with a chance for showers developing will reach a high of 48 degrees. And Saturday night, rain could even mix with some snowflakes before ending. Low temperatures into the lower part of the 30s. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro.
Looking at the temperatures, it is... Man, I really am not enjoying
this. Don't say it anymore.
Yeah, it's really sunny out. No, 40 in Stevens Point, 43 in Marshfield, and 42 in Wausau, 44 here in Wisconsin Rapids. Scott, we've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I know that we wanted to talk water. I want to get right into that with you, and not only just asking as a broad question because there's so many different subcategories to water in Wisconsin, and specifically clean water in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, I heard rumblings the other day about the talk about the CAFO, which it drives me to the point of ad nauseum sometimes. The CAFO is not happening. I heard somebody say, well, it still could. It still might. Their permits are still at DNR. There's not. There's no active permits at the DNR. And if anybody from the town of Saratoga would call the DNR would tell them, we're not even working on this anymore. The applications were incomplete. We've asked the company for more information. There is no information coming. The DNR literally quit working on these permits over a year ago already. It is not going to happen. So when every August of every election year, you start seeing the signs get freshened up once in a while or a new one get put out, only in August of election years. Nobody else is talking about any other time nowadays, but every August of election year, somebody will freshen up a new sign and try to scare people into thinking this thing is happening. It isn't. Point blank, done, over, out of the conversation. Let's talk about other clean water things real quick. For somebody to tell me that I should be disqualified for water issues is something that I never get political on this show, and I hate doing it because that's just not who I am. But there's been no issue that I've worked on more than water issues. Mm-hmm. I was the author of the producer-led watershed program that has taken over 50% of the phosphorus out of the Wisconsin River system. Not even a question. I was the one who took the shuttered study of the TMDL off the shelf and funded the analysis and the implementation for it so Lake Petenwell could be clean for the next decade. If anybody was on a Petenwell or Castle Rock the last 2 years here, you've seen a difference. It's amazing how different things can be when you put in that work and you put in the time and you get the results. So when people try to say that these things aren't happening, it's just frustrating that we have to spend time on it even sometimes because we've done this.
Yeah, we've been talking for a little over a year, you and I, and you're a passionate guy and you care about everything we've ever talked about. I've heard emotion behind it. This is the first time I've kind of seen you a little angry about something, like you're taking this a little personal because I know talking to you off air how important clean water is to you in this area, how much flooding has been important to you. You've been one of the only people to bring up some of these topics sometimes with all the representatives I talk to, at least.
And that's what I've been told is that my opponent tries to tell me that she's not going to put out these grandiose ideas and try to. Yeah, there's only one way to do this job. It is to be big, to be bold, to create avenues for success for people. And instead of just sitting back and waiting for something to happen, we have dived right into the floodwaters of Big Flats and Plainfield and Hancock and everywhere else and said, okay, there is not a good process. And you're right. This sucks right now that you guys have to go through this. You should not have to do this. And there's not a process. What are we going to do? We've been creating this process from scratch, trying to beg and plead with our town boards in those areas. Hey, I need your help. We need you to spend a little bit of money to do some engineering studies so we can show the DNR what we can do. Mm-hmm. So we've actually got engineering studies in our hands from several towns to take to the DNR, and the DNR has said, oh, thank you. It'll probably taken us 5 to 10 years to do this engineering otherwise if you didn't take the initiative to get it done. Those things matter. And people in those areas appreciate the hell out of that because somebody is listening and somebody is trying to do something. Whether you get success in everything that you do or not, it doesn't always matter. But you've got to be a part of the game, and you've got to step in, and you've got to try to help people. And that's exactly what we've done with all these situations, from contaminated wells to nitrates to flooding to even back in 2012 when there was less than any water in some of these lakes in the state of Wisconsin, and high cap wells and everything else. I mean, to be on the forefront of it and that people just to keep putting the blinders on and saying, oh, nothing's happening. Oh, nothing's happening. It's ridiculous. I hate to end the show like that, but I mean, it's just, those things matter, and people see the difference, and people see the results, and they know what's going on.
We'll have our 90s baseball show one of these days, so don't, save those notes.
I'm boycotting baseball today because the Brewers couldn't seem to get a hit yesterday. So
I'm with you on this one.
That's right.
I did want to say, though, when it comes to the situation with the Saratoga business and all that, or not Saratoga business, but, what you mentioned there with that, and because I always get the name wrong, that's why I worded it that way. Yeah. But that storyline or any of these storylines when it comes to water and everything, the facts are out there. People can find them out. You mentioned a good point about reaching out to your Saratoga representatives or the people in the municipality over there, that kind of thing. They're going to tell you what they know. They're going to give you the facts on these things. And it kind of brings us back to the point of, when I was asking you or asking any of our representatives, well, what do you do in today's day and age when you have facts and you're coming to people with them and they come back with you of, no, fake news. And they just get to throw that out there. It must be so nice to just be able to I don't like what you're saying, so I could just say fake news.
I literally keep my head down. I keep doing my work, and I know that noise is out there, and I have to address it, and I wish I didn't have to. But you keep your head down, you do your work, and you get results, and you get the job done. That's how you get past some of those things. You just do the job.